Bad news. I'm a disaster of a person.
It turns out I'm a disaster. Yesterday I spent like an hour looking for my motorcycle keys. I couldn't find them, so I took the metro to the office. I was late, of course, and later that day when I got back home I found them in the fridge next to a broccoli. And I'm still trying to figure out why. Anyway, we better leave that story for another day. This time I want to talk about how I managed to mess up on Christmas Day. Now this is not another heartwarming tale about Christmas, because it's March and that would be unseasonable. This is a story about this little guy, the Olympus XA. And I promise we're not gonna make any jokes regarding its size, because we're not that kind of people. Once upon a time, in the beautiful city of Madrid, some people say it's the best city in the world. To them I say, yeah, of course, we already know that, but I'm glad you're catching up. That bright Christmas morning, eBay decided it was the perfect time to finally deliver that package I'd been waiting on for over a month. Coincidence? I like to think of it more as a Christmas miracle. Today is Christmas Day, and I got this cute little camera as a present. I've never used this. I don't know if it works or I don't know. It's a little Olympus XA. Let's give it a go. Let's load some film and let's see what this little thing is capable of doing. But before we go into the festive disaster of that morning, let's talk a little bit about this camera. Technically, this isn't a review, but I will tell you why I decided to buy it and what I think about it, so maybe I guess it is a review. The Olympus XA is not a point-and-shoot, it's a full-frame semi-automatic aperture-priority rangefinder built in 1979 by Yoshihisa Maitani, and it's tiny, one of the smallest rangefinders ever made. It comes with this detachable flash, which I've never used, so no comments there, but I guess it could come in handy. It's a fully electronic camera, so it needs batteries. It's got a 35 f2.8 Zuko lens, and because it's semi-automatic, Olympus decided to give you a taste of responsibility. Not that any of you deserve it. You select the aperture, f2.8 to f22, set the ISO up to 800, and based on those decisions, the camera handles the shutter speed for you from 1 second to 1/500 of a second, giving you a perfect, exquisite exposure. It's a manual focus camera adjusted with this adorable little lever right here. Plus you get focusing scale for zone focusing, which we'll talk about in just a bit. And if we flip it over to the bottom, there's a battery check feature that makes a sound my dog absolutely hates, a backlight compensation switch, adding 1.5 stops of light for those backlit situations, of course, and a self-timer that lasts longer than the hope of finding your keys wherever you thought you left them. And now that we've got all that boring stuff out of the way, let's talk about all the things I don't like. The shutter button. This thing is very sensitive. If you're not careful, you will be firing shots you don't mean to take, like artistic pictures of your feet. I heard there's a whole niche for that in OnlyFans. You do you. My suggestion is, once you rewind, close the clamshell. It's safer that way. Focusing. It's not easy. The patch inside the viewfinder is quite small and as visible as my future plans, so matching the images to get a clean shot is a hard task. My suggestion, use zone focusing. If you don't know what zone focusing is, just very briefly, you pick a distance on the focusing scale and everything in that range stays in focus, and hope for the best. Zone focusing depends on two things, the focal length and the aperture. The idea is to increase the depth of field if you want to make things easier, so the higher the aperture, like f8, and the lower the focal length, in this case 35mm, will help. I'm already giving too much information in this, so let's move on.
If I get this Santa Claus here, and then someone's coming over there, I don't know if it will look good. I tried, but we'll see how that looks in a couple of days. It's definitely not a fast camera, so it's kind of slow to use. At least maybe because I'm not used to it yet. So for fast street photography, photos, and snapping pictures of people, it might not be the best option.
Size. Yes, its size is the best and worst thing. It's very pocketable, which was the whole point of getting this camera, but it also sucks because everything is small. The viewfinder is small, the focusing lever is small, loading film into the camera is not the easiest because it's small, and of course it's so tiny that it might slip out of your hands, crash on the ground, causing the camera to pop open and expose the entire roll of film. This is exactly what happened to me that day.
No me lo puedo creer, tío.
My suggestion: use the strap that is included with the camera. It's there for a good reason. Other than that, this camera is quite fun, because the most important thing to understand is the reason why one gets a camera like this in the first place. And that's different for all of us. In my case, I was looking for a small point and shoot, something I could always have with me when I'm not specifically going out to take photos. But then I saw this camera and thought, maybe it's more fun than a point and shoot, because since I have no control over my life, maybe at least I can control some camera settings. And despite the negatives, it's actually fun to play around with. It is what it is, a film camera that I can take anywhere and forget about it. So I'm not going to be too hard on it. Does lens quality matter that much to me in this case? Not really. It's not the best, but it's not so bad. Some weeks after testing the camera's build quality, which is surprisingly solid, good build quality, I went to Switzerland for work, and I brought it with me. I finally had the chance to see the Alps, and what a magical place. I've always wanted to see the Alps, and I finally had the chance, but it was a work trip, and they were very busy days, so sadly I couldn't go on a good photo walk. But the Olympus XA was with me at all times, and whenever I could, I made good use of it. I also took it with me on a few occasions around Madrid. After spending a few days with this camera, I came to a conclusion. It's not exactly built for speed, mostly because of all the negatives I mentioned earlier. For example, if you're into street photography, catching those unexpected moments won't be easy. And if you follow my advice, which honestly you probably shouldn't 98% of the time, and close the clamshell to avoid firing accidentally, you'll have to open every single time you take a shot, blah, 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 blah. And then there's the focusing, which is still tricky. You could rely on zone focusing, like we've talked about, but it's a skill. But then, what are we here for if not to get better at things? You're about to see one of the best views of Madrid. Really nice views. This park is called El Parque de las Siete Tetas, the Park of the Seven Tits, because there are 7 hills. Time to wait now for the sun to go down. But yeah, this is definitely one of the best places in Madrid if you want to watch the sunset. It's a really, really nice place, and not everyone knows about it. After these days, I think this camera is a good addition to my collection, especially after paying a heavy price in customs. That was a mistake. But the camera feels good, it's fun, and I just need some more time with it. For now, it's staying. And I don't have much more to add. I hope you enjoyed that. See you later. Egg face.